your name and your outlet, please, so we can double check.
Yeah, sure. I'm Luis Pimentel from Istoé magazine, Brazil.
Yes.
Cool.
Okay, so when I clap, then the interview will start, okay?
Okay?
Zijn we klaar om te beginnen dan in kamer 2?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Casar, thanks
Hi.
for your time. As we have limited time, I will skip formality and go straight to the questions.
Yeah.
I'm sorry
should I look
for
in
that.
the camera or should I look here? Or both?
Yeah, you can look at the screen.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Is that a good eye line if I look here for you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Sorry.
You can talk.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go. Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's what I was doing. Thanks, Stein. Sorry.
Okay.
Then we start now,
Ms.
yeah?
Casar,
Yeah.
yeah, sure. Ms. Casar, this is a very well-known story from Anne Frank's diaries. What is like for the cast and for you to work on a story that is not new, already told many, many times, but from a different perspective
Yes.
now?
Yes, I have to agree and disagree with you in that I don't think the general public doesn't know about Méprise. The story of A Small Light is through her point of view. It's through her eyes. She is depicting and living the way she lived through the war, even before the war, as Otto Frank's secretary, assistant, and became part of the family. And then how she, during the war, had to hide them, be the provider, run the office as well. She had a lot of pressure on her. So, of course, the Anne Frank story is well known, but it's a story that needs to be said again. You know, this is a story that I heard only yesterday that they're planning in certain places in America to remove the Anne Frank diary from the curses, which I think is from the how do you say the studies, which I find is shocking because it's not just about a religion or a Jewish girl. Of course they were martyrs. Of course the family went through the most traumatic humiliation that a human being can go through. One of the most horrendous stories that we know about, because I'm sure there were other genocides that were terrible too. The genocides of the Armenians by the Turks. There's some very, very awful genocides. Not just that, the genocide of the Indians by the American conquistadors, and the Spanish conquistadors. So we know that as human beings, these horrors have happened. But what is very interesting in this story is, again, the courageousness, the bravery, the integrity of this young woman and her partner, and how they really try to bring light and bring hope and bring information of the outside world. How they risked their lives. I mean, they risked a firing squad, you know. So this story is very relevant today, I find, because, you know, the fascists are not hiding anymore today. Since the Second World War, there was a slump, thank God. And I just don't understand human beings. I don't understand humanity anymore. How, as human beings, they can submit themselves because of, I don't know, fear or lack of knowledge or lack of education to this movement. Because this is only about closing. Fascism is only about closing. It's not about opening. It's not about... Tell me, maybe you can help me. I don't know of many great movements that came through fascism. Maybe a couple of architects who were existing before fascism and who got taken on. I do not know of any great movement. Wagner was an anti-Semite, but he wasn't a fascist. So Louis Ferdinand Céline was, you know, not part of the fascist party, the great writer, but he was an anti-Semite. So I don't see, in general, today, when I look back in history of art, any great movement of writing, literature, painting, music that came from the fascists. So I think this should also serve as an example to people. And I think that people should realize that going back and diving into history is first very rich for you, that a lot of young people need to know what happened before. You need to, as an actor. The world is not just seen through actors' eyes, but as an interpreter. Anything you do as an artist, as a painter, as a writer, as a doctor, you need to know what happened before. You need to have the knowledge to recreate your own vision, your own world. You cannot cancel culture. And I find it shocking that people want to cancel Anne Frank from schools. I mean, she's a vital, vital writer. First of all, she's a brilliant writer. The first page of her description of the annex is completely like a Flaubert novel. And secondly, I was very, very passionate about playing Mrs. Frank because I thought Mrs. Frank was a very modern, forward-thinking, progressive lady. So was Otto. But Mrs. Frank provided a big part of the education of the daughters. She wanted them to go to Montessori schools. You know, these were Jewish people who were not necessarily religious, but they were very international. They spoke many languages, and they had a very big awareness of the world, of Europe. They traveled all across Europe. They came from wealthy, very wealthy backgrounds, both of them. They had everything taken away from them in 1933. They come to Holland thinking that this wouldn't happen, although Mrs. Frank was a bit worried about it already. And, you know, they were stripped of their lives. They were downgraded. And these are people who had very high morals. They were bringing in, as they employed Miep, who was so inexperienced in jam making, and they employed her in the factory. They allowed people into the annex, you know, that were the Van Pelses, the Dr. Pfeffer in the story. And they gave everything they had. They gave their generosity. They gave the best pieces of food that they had. They gave the best bedrooms. They gave the salon of the annex, you know. So this shows you that these people were noble-minded. And also I would like to celebrate the Dutch people, because we filmed here a bit. And I have to say that the Dutch people were absolutely the only nation that I know of who resisted the Nazis and went on strike for 3 whole days. The whole country went to a standstill. And then when the Jews were ordered to put the yellow star on, many, many Dutch people, because they loved their Jews, the Jews had been in Holland for 500 years, since the Spanish Inquisition. And they came out en masse, in the masses, and put a yellow piece of thread, flower, anything they could find. So there were incredible Dutch resistance. Miep and Jan are 2 of them. And I think that when you see documentaries on Miep and Holocaust survivors and what they went through, and see that they still went on living with such dignity and joy, and trying to transmit that to younger people. So we cannot betray their memory.
Regarding that, you are daughter of a Kurdish father, Russian mother, grew up in England, Ireland, and France. Being so multicultural, do you think you have more empathy when dealing with a theme like persecution during war?
I don't know. I think I'm in the business of metamorphosis. I'm an actor, and that's about metamorphosis. What I come from has really not much to do with it, although I come from a multicultural background and I was brought up in different countries. I mean, the Kurds, my grandfather and my father were Kurdish. I can see what they went through. Many members of my family or cousins who were half Russian, their families also had to leave, exodus, and leave Russia with the Russian Revolution. There were many, many Russians in Persia. So, in those days, who came with the revolution. There were Armenians from the genocide of Hadrian, and there were Armenians who were there from the Turkish genocide. The Turkish, again, so the Armenians went through 2 genocides. There were Polish people, there were Russian people, there were Jewish people who were living in Persia from the first exodus of Babylon. So that goes back to 2,550 years, something like that. I'm not a historian. But I just love history, and I think that my job as an actor is not about whether I'm Jewish or not. I'm in it for the metamorphosis. I'm in it to transcribe and to give something of a human experience that I'm going to hopefully live through. I don't like to make saints of the dead. The dead are human beings. But the Franks, to go back to the Franks, and wonderful people like them who existed, were all about generosity and opening up, not about closing. They were about fighting. They were about fighting obscurity, and obscurity is very dangerous today.
Okay.
I think.
And how did you get into filming the series, and how did you get out of filming it? Did anything change in regard to your perception of the story?
How did I step out of the role? Is that what you?
Yeah, and how did you step out of the role?
Oh.
Did anything change regarding your perception of the story?
Yes, because again, I say that, first of all, I'm trained to step out. To step in and step out. That's our training. It's like working on a puzzle, and bringing your soul and your imagination and trying not to betray these people who existed is a kind of a big responsibility on our shoulders when we portray these kind of wonderful human beings. But again, not to make saints of them. They're human beings of flesh and blood. So, yes, I think Mrs. Frank touched me immensely. I tried to make her into a real human being, take her off the page. I think we have to stop, don't we?
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Do I have time for one more question?
If it's quick, go. I think.
Yeah. Any recommendations to those who are going to watch it, like read or reread the diaries before watching the series?
I would definitely recommend reading Miep's autobiography because it is absolutely fascinating. And to read Anne Frank's book, I mean, I read it as an adult again. I'd read it as a child, and I read it again. And though it resonates because you have this mature, absolutely ambivalent, paradoxal character who speaks like an adult in a child's body, is so full of life and beans, and has this real talent that the family tried to nurture. And I think she's a brilliant writer. I think she really, really managed to get under the skin of people and to try and relate to the human experience and to speak in such an honest way of herself. She was also very critical of herself, and she had a very good sense of humor, as did all the Frank family. So I would read both books and see as many documentaries on the Holocaust, and also watch a lot of the interviews that the Spielberg Foundation did on the Holocaust survivors, because they're fascinating to see the courage, the resilience, and the taste for life that the Holocaust survivors still have or had is absolutely gobsmacking. Adios.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Adeus.
Bye.